He grew up as a sheep herder on a sheep ranch. It was writing music that he really was doing all the time. But I heard from his younger brother, my Uncle Joe, that when they would move the sheep out to the summer range, Joe would plead with my grandfather, please don't send me out with Leroy, anybody but Leroy. He just sits under a tree writing, and the sheep are going all over the mountain. Even Rex, the sheepdog, hates it when he sees Leroy coming. He was not a great sheep herder. He was more of a shepherd type of an individual. But that was his style. He was just preoccupied all the time writing.
My father was a deeply religious, highly educated, very devoted to his family and to his work, and his impact on me was profound because of who he was.
For years, he was always my accompanist. If I had to play a solo, I dragged him along. He once said, "Renee, there is no compromise in music."
Well, I got two views of Robertson. One view was with his family, and I knew he came from modest. But Robertson rose above that. Intellectually, he was a giant, but he didn't expose his gianthood. He didn't make, I'm a giant, you're a podunk. I never felt that way about him. When I saw the trilogy, I knew that was a giant piece. I recognized its gianthood.
The one composition that is the very favorite of mine, and the one that I know backwards and forwards, because I have sung it and I have played it, is the oratorio from the Book of Mormon. It was quite spectacular, and it was always fun when he would come and be there for the rehearsals, and would very quietly mention a few things to the conductor of what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. But that was my favorite.
He was so private, and he was very soft-spoken. He was extremely modest. He had all of the wrong attributes to be a composer that was recognized on everybody's tongue.
His hands were simply an extension of his thoughts as he put the music pencil to paper. He had an incredible mind. No superfluous notes. Everything has to have its place in the grand design of the composition.
He always spoke in terms of principles. He would say to me, there's a problem here in this passage. Let me tell you what I think the problem is. There's a principle involved in the problem. And then he would articulate the principle. And he would say to me, can you articulate that principle? Can you tell me what that principle is? That you are at fault here? So that was my pattern of learning from Robertson. He would identify what he thought might be done better, and that there was a principle involved in that being better. And he would want me to articulate that principle before he articulated it. If I couldn't, then he would help me.
He would just go about figuring out a way to help the student play better. So I was lucky.
Without Robertson, we wouldn't have had the department or the facilities that we have. Robertson was entirely responsible for that. The other thing I think that's very important is that Robertson felt strongly that we had the talent here to have a Utah-based symphony. The lifeblood of the Utah Symphony were the young students here at the University of Utah.
Abravanel made it his business to look at things in the longest range possible. And he simply went to President Alpin after Robertson had received the Reichelt Prize, which was a singular event in North American music, classical music, and told Alpen that we couldn't do it without a partnership with people of that level. And by all means, steal, buy, but get Robertson up to the U of U.
Father had always felt that we had a need here in the West for a terrific professional orchestra. Even in 1935, there's newspaper clippings where he's asking that we need to get a professional symphony. And when Abravanel came, Father, he said to me, you know, Abravanel is one of the great ones. He knows what music is all about. And Abravanel, for his part, appreciated Father as a composer.
Robertson had made a music department, a first-class music department. Everybody came to the University of Utah because that's where the action was. And we've never relinquished that wonderful role of being the center of music in Utah.
Robertson, as the head of the department at the University of Utah, did change the culture because he personally was capable of expanding his own horizons. That is, he hadn't been primarily a functionary out there in the world of big guns. He was, in spite of the fact that he had been successful in his pursuit of the DMA at USC, his whole life had been lived here in the mountains. And we don't know what is the measure of a man until that measure is proven on the podium or in the piece of music or in the administration. He knew about that world out there, and he didn't know that we couldn't do it.
He inspired me to compose, and this wonderful man ignited a fire within my breast, and I composed from that point onward.
I think of him as a bootstrap person, and who pulled up his own bootstraps. I'm sure nobody was more surprised than he that he won the Reichelt Award. And so in the process of pulling himself up by his bootstraps, he pulled us all up and gave us a new horizon, a new vision to look forward to.